First District. We're going to go over some matters right here, right now, related to the operation of our city. Madam Clerk, some of these matters, we're going to hold 1 and 2 for a moment. Number 3. Any report on number 3?
I believe 3 and 4 are to be considered with 1 and 2.
All right. 3 and 4 is considered 1 and 2. What else?
Then there's items 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Okay, let's try 7 and 8.
Okay, item 7 is our LA for Kids Steering Committee report relative to term extensions for the Culver Slauson Rec Center redevelopment project and the Winnetka Park project.
Good afternoon, Bernice Hollins, Office of the CAO. The LA for Kids Steering Committee is recommending in favor of these 2 term extensions that would provide additional time to complete construction and project closeout activities. These recommendations have been vetted with the 2 respective council districts. As a matter of record, there is a potential general fund impact for additional operating and maintenance expenses once the Culver Slauson Rec Center improvements are completed. That request would be addressed through the 2010-11 city budget process.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reyes. Any questions?
No.
So ordered.
Thank
Next
you.
item.
Thank you. And item number 8 is also LA for Kids Steering Committee report relative to the allocation and reallocation of Prop 12 and 40 funds.
Lori Hancock, CAO. The report before you is a recommendation from the LA for Kids Steering Committee to reallocate and allocate $4.3 million in Prop 12 and Prop 40 funds to various projects within the program. These allocations are needed to maximize the use of these grants, and they go from projects that have been completed to projects that need funding or project dollars that have not been designated to projects yet.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes, any questions?
Nope.
All right, so ordered on 7 and 8 by Mr. Reyes. Okay, now, item 6, tell me about that.
And 6 is a report from the Department of Recreation and Parks relative to a funding application for the Jim Gilliam Child Care Center.
Good afternoon, council members. Kevin Regan, Assistant General Manager, Department of Recreation and Parks. The item before you is a submission of a grant regarding child care at Jim Gilliam Recreation Center. It is for $216,454. It's a grant application to the California Department of Education to continue this funding at Jim Gilliam, which is a licensed preschool center run by the Department of Recreation and Parks. The administrative code requires that we obtain not only board approval, but council approval for the
Certainly.
submission.
Ms. Israel,
Yes, sir.
the fine history with the city, especially with issues such as this, what's your recommendation?
Absolutely to approve it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Reyes? So ordered. Okay, that's 6.
Thank you.
All right, now how about number 5?
And number 5 is a report from the City Administrative Officer relative to maintenance and operations agreement with Volunteers of America of Los Angeles for the Valley Plaza Park Rec Center.
Good afternoon, Veronica Salumbidas with the Office of the CAO. The item before you is a maintenance and operations agreement between the Department of Recreation and Parks and the Volunteers of America of Los Angeles. The proposed agreement is for a term of 5 years. Under the terms of the proposed agreement, the city leases the Valley Plaza Recreation Center to the Volunteers of America of Los Angeles for the operation of a Head Start program. According to the department, the contractor has operated and maintained the facility since June 2006 under a right of entry permit. The contractor provides a federally funded child care program known as Head Start for preschool children from low-income families. Under the terms of the proposed agreement, the contractor will be solely responsible for all costs and maintenance of the facility, so there is no impact on the general fund, and the CAO recommends approval. Department representative is here to answer any questions you may have.
Recreation Parks Real Estate, we support the
Very good.
agreement.
Mr. Reyes? So ordered. Okay, and then Madam Clerk, items 1, 2, 3, 4, there's a mixture of them. How many we could put together? One and
Well, if you'd
four?
like, I can read all 4 items, and then you can
read all 4.
discuss them all, and then we can take the disposition for each of them separately at the end.
Okay, good.
So item 1 is a discussion of the Department of Recreation and Parks current budget, their submittal for the 2010-11 budget, the impact of the early retirement incentive program, possible restructuring of department operations, and other related matters. And item number 2 is the similar discussion with the Los Angeles Department of Aging.
Very good. And then 3 and 4 are,
And 3 is a report from the ITGA Committee relative to the development and implementation of a plan that addresses efficiencies and savings while maintaining service to senior constituents.
is anyone here to talk on that right now? James? No one here. They talked to you about this, James, from ITA? So,
There are representatives from both the Department of Aging and Rec and Parks.
but on number 3, it's, okay, on the technology. From committee. Very good. We'll take it all up of that. All right, at this time, I just want to make note for the file here, Mr. Reyes, if I could, we received several correspondence. We're looking at all these things on recreation right now. We're going to take aging afterwards. But if you have comments to make, you could interspice, because it's all about the same, serving people. But I want to note and file, and Mr. Reyes, you should have copies of this at all. A very detailed report from the Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council came in that the Neighborhood Council for Griffith Park opposes all recommendations entitled to the city restructuring proposals of the Department of Recreation and Parks. It also talks about the proposals for Recreation and Parks to require to pay its pension liabilities rate up. It also opposes all recommendations related to Recreation and Parks in city restructuring, consolidation, design, and delivery of capital projects. You want to note that. That's from the Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council. Also from Lucinda Phillips, an email that states that they oppose the removal of peace officer rangers from Recreation and Parks, request to restore the chief ranger position authority to Rec and Parks, and oppose any recommendations that eliminate recreation functions by the Parks Department. Okay, also from Angela Stewart, do not support any reduction in the Recreation and Parks or privatization of the golf course. From Angela Stewart, these will be all documents. Marion Dodge requested the Department of Recreation and Parks pay DWP. Water and power is ludicrous. Rec and Parks should pay $20 million, etc. And this is a comment concerning the utility charge, for the record. Also opposes Marion Dodge privatization of municipal golf courses. This is the Greater Griffith Park comments. This is from Laurel Howell on Madison Avenue concerning this council file. As a citizen and member of the Neighborhood Council, needs a viable budget, Recreation and Parks, to protect its uses with our parks. I urge you to get a stronger budget and not adopt 3-year plan. Lynn Brown, due to health reasons, can't attend, opposes any cuts to Recreation and Parks. A letter from the Los Feliz Improvement Association, similar to the same thing that the Neighborhood Council said about golf operations, consolidation design of capital projects, and opposed to the restructuring proposed. Carol Nigg is also opposed. Please distribute my remarks. Unable to attend. And she referenced Steve Lopez's column in the LA Times. Finally, a letter from the University of California, Los Angeles, Mr. Reyes, from Catherine Sarkazian, talking about aging issues. This is a public document record. And also Andrew Gerstein about the cuts that are proposed.
Right.
These are our written correspondence.
Mr. Chair, I think on the you saw letter from, I think it's Dr. Sarkazian, one of the points that stands out in her letter is that City of Los Angeles with Department of Aging, her colleagues and herself been able to successfully compete for and win over $7 million in federal funding from the National Institute of Health to implement and test innovative evidence-based programs to improve the quality of life of vulnerable Los Angeles seniors. So, just for the record, I want to make sure that amount is a significant amount that needed to be noted.
Very good.
Thank you.
And we'll consider that again, we consider aging things, I'll separate it aside. All right, I got a public comment now on this committee with the number of cards we have. I got a 1-minute public comment. Your name is called, please come to the front, fill in the chairs. If you need a little extra time, you could have that. This is item number 1, Recreation and Parks. Barbara Ferris, Jason Elam, Christian Sabo, Joseph Young. Take a chair. It's all right, Jason, I made the mistake. Barbara, please.
Thank you. My name is Barbara Ferris. I'm Managing Director of Symphony and the Glen Pre-Concerts at Griffith Park, and I'm also here to speak for Arthur B. Rubenstein, our Maestro President and Music Director. Mr. Rubenstein has personally committed over $2 million of his own personal funds over the last 15 years to Griffith Park for the free concerts to work with our partners, the Department of Recreation and Parks. And we consider the slashing and evisceration of the Department of Recreation and Parks to be a gross betrayal of the people of Los Angeles and what they own in that park and how they love that park and what they need from that park. We do urge you, Tom, and all of you who sit around the horseshoe, as we call it, to please not eviscerate the Department of Recreation and Parks. Please look to them, be responsible, and be fiscally responsible with everything having to do with that department and all other things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sabo.
Oh, okay. Kristen Sabo, I'm a volunteer with Recreation and Parks. Where do I start? There are so many things going on with the budget, and you're giving me 1 minute to comment on all the multitude of cuts, decisions, changes, alterations. It's very difficult to address any of this. I mean, basically, I've written it up in a 10-page document that I'm going to give to your clerk. But the big thing is the utilities charge to Recreation and Parks. I think if you look at the city charter, and the city charter has to be looked at in everything that you're doing. I understand cuts are needed across the board, but the citizens of Los Angeles made some decisions, and that is to protect libraries and parks during difficult financial times. And I think you'll find that when you ask Rec and Parks and Libraries to pay pension liabilities and utilities, you're basically reducing those departments to 50% of the budget after 5 years if they actually pay roughly the full amount. I think the citizens of Los Angeles insisted that they were protecting those two departments, especially when you look at it. There's also, in the city charter, also, DWP has so many installations of different types that they would be paying franchise fees on if Recreation and Parks were a private citizen. And so I imagine that if you actually did that analysis, the amount that they'd be paying Rec and Parks is at least a push on the utilities. And so I hope you will consider that, or, somebody among the citizens will ask you formally to consider that. Thank you.
Jason.
Good afternoon, council members. While council member Reyes, you moved cavalierly to lay off 3,000 city workers, I wanted to remind the council and the public that the Coalition of LA City Unions, as well as SEIU 721, have given up $58 million through the early retirement incentive program this year, and next year we'll save $150 million for a savings of $2 billion over the next 5 years. So if this is a cynical way to get labor back to the table, we've been at the table for 3 years. That's number one. Talk about Rec and Parks. The mayor kind of fudged it a little bit by talking about privatization of golf courses by saying that the golf courses lose money. They do not. They make $16 to $18 million in revenue. Even if you talk about salaries of about $8 million, the golf courses make about $8 to $10 million a year. My last point, we worked with the department, and we're continuing to work with the department on restructuring. We have a good partnership with them. 2003 to 2006, we figured out how to get park maintenance done with a 30% vacancy rate. Privatization will not save money. So we hope that your plan does not include privatization of grounds maintenance or recreation services. Thank you.
I just want to make one point, Mr. Chair. To describe what is happening as being cavalier is wrong. and inaccurate, but you have the right to say what you feel, and that's your right. Second, it is painful for me to see these cuts, given the kind of district I represent and the services that are going to be impacted, so it does not come easy. And lastly, my goal is to save jobs. Whether you believe it or not, that's another point. But my goal is to save jobs, given the death and crisis we're in. And I'm looking forward to working with the unions to get a solution to continue saving jobs today, tomorrow, and until I'm gone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Young.
Mr. Labange, Mr. Reyes, good afternoon. I'm Joe Young with the Sierra Club. The Sierra Club considers open space and parks to be essential to the well-being of a community, and we are gravely concerned that these draconian cuts will severely damage these parks, which are so needed by the public. I'd also like to comment on a couple of very specific things regarding the Department of Water and Power and its affiliation with the park. DWP is going a number of projects right now, some of which have been increased in cost unnecessarily. For example, the pipeline job on Crystal Springs Drive. The contractor was ordered to leave the project, pave it over, come back after the Festival of Lights, dig it up, and start work again. That cost a bundle. And I understand from a representative of DWP that that is exactly the same thing that is expected to happen this year. That shouldn't happen. Save that kind of money. You should also be looking at franchise fees to be paid to the Department of Recreation and Parks from DWP for all the water pipelines and electrical lines that crisscross the park. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before you leave there, I just wanted to say, Mr. Young, I fought for the Festival of Lights, which has been a gift by Water and Power, for maybe not for you, but for people who enjoy it as a family experience, more of a walking experience, great push by many to create more of a walking experience. And if it's convenient again, I think it's important to share the city. That's one of my philosophies. I will address the DWP utility issues when Mr. Muckrey makes his comments formally. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next items will be Mr. Stephen Box, Sally Neubauer, Susan Borden, and Marion Dodge.
Stephen Box. I live in Hollywood on Canyon and CD4. These are crazy times for Los Angeles, the largest city in the most populated state and the most powerful country in the world, and we're in the middle of a budget crisis, and that's no news to anybody. But when in a situation like this, I think it's fair to say that the first thing we do is to start by looking at the roadmap for the city, and that would be our city charter. And so I speak in support of the charter departments that somehow find themselves being swept up in this turbulence. I think it's really important that we support Rec and Parks as a charter department and look at it as one of the foundations of this great city. And if we're to survive this budget crisis, it's going to be by looking for opportunities for efficiency within that department and how that department perhaps can help us in other areas. For example, my personal anecdote is the Orange Line bike path, which was so unkept that it turned into a homeless encampment in one stretch. We had a contract with a company that came from San Gabriel Valley, well, purportedly came from San Gabriel Valley, and never came to clean it. Yet Park and Rec's maintenance people were in the neighborhood up and down the 14 miles. Why we don't look for opportunities to put people to work, those that are already within Rec and Parks, is beyond me, and instead contract with companies that don't show up, that don't even come from L.A. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, my name is Susan Borden, and I'm not a very good speaker. I'm giving my time to Sally Neubauer.
Well, you can't give her time, so just tell us your heart, Ms. Borden.
Okay,
And if Sally needs more time, she'll get more time.
thank you. I'm very disturbed by these cuts. I've lived here since 1969, and the parks, when people ask me what I like about the area, I say Elysian Park. And I love the park, and I love the river, and I know many people who do, and I've watched the deterioration over the years as everything has been cut here and cut a little bit more there, and then cut a little bit more there. And I think this is the point at which we need to draw the line. I really do.
Thank you, Ms. Borden. That's very well spoken. Ms. Neubauer?
Good afternoon. My name is Sally Neubauer, and I live at 1501 Cerro Gordo, and I'm representing the Citizens Committee to Save Elysian Park today. Once again, we're down here before you when the budget is being decided, and once again, we're having to fight for recreation and parks. I think it's really important that you hear all the people here saying how important parks are, and how important recreation programs are, and where there's a will, there's a way to find other ways to cut other areas. For instance, street cleaning. I mean, how often do you really need a street cleaned, and how well is that street cleaner really doing the job? I think it's really important that you do not, our committee is totally opposed to the section that says city restructuring, Department of Recreation and Parks, and reimbursement of general fund costs. We are opposed to that whole section. The golf courses make money for recreation programs. We need that money, and we do not need to lose our park rangers as well. The park rangers are really important for the safety in the parks, and they should not be put on a cut list. If we're talking safety in the city, we should talk holding on to our recreation and parks, recreation and to our safety in the parks, and that's for everyone in the city to benefit.
Thank you, Mr. Neubauer. Ms. Dodge?
Good afternoon, council members. I'm Marion Dodge, 2648 North Commonwealth. The request that the Department of Recreation and Parks pay the DWP for its use of water and power is ludicrous. Recreation and Parks will pay an estimated $20 million to DWP, another city agency. In elementary school, we learned that minus 20 million plus 20 million equals zero. So where's the savings? Some would say that you're shifting the deck chairs on the Titanic. Others would say that you're robbing the poor to give to the rich. And history tells us what happens to governments who use that tactic. If this is the way the CAO has been preparing budgets, it's no wonder the city is facing a budget crisis. Forget charging recreation and parks water power usage. It's not a savings. Thank
Thank you very much. Next, Eric Calhoun, Michael Wildman, Advar, forgive me, Advar Zovivian, Partners in Care Foundation. Thank you. Forgive me for, my name's Tom Labongi, so you could mess my name up. I apologize. And also, June Simons, you hit 1 and 2. Okay, this is for item 1. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Calhoun.
Thank you, Mr. Councilman. My name is Eric Calhoun. I'm an employee of Recreation and Parks. I'm also one of the leaders of their union. I'm imploring you not to impose these utility charges to our department. These tax dollars that these citizens have voted for back in the charter were to provide services to the city. By forcing our management to do these things, we're going to have to shut down parks. And if you recall in the 80s, last time we had a budget crisis, parks were closed down, and crime rate in Los Angeles skyrocketed. Drive-by shootings that's when they started happening. And then most of those crimes committed were in parks. We cannot do this to our children. They don't have any say. They don't pay the bills. We can't make these decisions and take away their safe spots. So please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Whitman?
Thank you, Councilman Labange. My name is Michael Whitman. I'm Vice President of the Los Feliz Improvement Association, representing approximately 1,000 households around the Griffith Park neighborhood. We have previously provided a letter to the committee setting forth our objections to several of the items of the proposed budget for the Department of Recreation and Parks, and I'm here to reiterate some of those issues here today. We strongly object to the transfer of department funding through the assessment of the DWP fees, the consolidation of design services through the removal of the Advanced Planning Division, and the privatization of the municipal golf courses until such time, if ever, that such schemes are proven effective. While we recognize that these are challenging economic times, when we look at this budget, all we see is a manipulation. We believe that none of these actions will result in any real savings to the city, but only gut the Department of Recreation and Parks budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, council members. My name is Anwar Zuhaid from Partners in Care, and I'm here to speak for the consolidation or the moving of the 28 senior centers from Park and Recs to the Department of Aging. By aligning all senior services under the Department of Aging, it would bring more expertise to the service, a more service-rich programs, assurance that all seniors are being served by experienced experts, cost savings by streamlining services, and a major network of nonprofit agency collaboratives that the Department of Aging has worked so hard to establish. I think I can speak for all nonprofit agencies right now. We are so ready to work with the Department of Aging to further serve our community better.
Thank you very much.
I'm June Simmons, 4128 Rhodes Avenue in Studio City with Partners in Care Foundation. We are here to speak on behalf of the health and safety of older citizens. Park and recreations is important, and we believe in it, so we're not against them, but we do feel it would be tremendous cost savings by relocating the management of the 28 senior centers that are operated under their leadership. The Department of Aging has a history of successfully outsourcing these kinds of senior services to the private sector at a much lower cost. And also, the private sector then has a base for increasing private fundraising from foundations and other government sources in order to improve and enhance the services without the money coming out of the city budget. So we feel that there's a real opportunity to address this city budget crisis, improve services, and maintain the integrity of both departments.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Alfredo Hernandez, Deborah Cherry, and Marilyn Bush.
Good afternoon, Councilman. I have been a 12-year employee of Rec and Parks. Half of those with aging, with senior centers. I also worked 2 years with the Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust. Both of you gentlemen know what we do very well. I'm also with the Friends of the Hollywood Central Park. First of all, parks are very, very important to me and as to many people here. And programming at parks is already very, very weak. And to have to burden Rec and Parks with utilities is just going to make things even more difficult. Also, touching a little bit on the merger of Department of Aging with Rec and Parks. Having been with a nonprofit and having struggled with a nonprofit at Los Angeles Neighborhood Land Trust, an organization that focuses on parks, nonprofits are not in a very good position right now to take on any more work. In fact, merging or giving our current projects to a nonprofit would probably make these projects fail. I'm sorry to say that, but thank you for your time.
Thank you. Alfredo, hello.
Hi, good day, Councilman Labange, Councilman Reyes. I'm Deborah Cherry from the Alzheimer's Association, and I'm here to speak about the potential for a win-win in some part of this terrible situation. As we look forward, as we look at a time of very small financial resources, we have an ethical as well as a fiscal responsibility. We need to look at how do we serve the people who need us most, given limited resources. The number of people who are aging in this community is about to skyrocket. We're at the beginning of the baby boomers exploding into old age. Lots of those people will age healthily and need services that are appropriate to that. Others are going to be frail. I brought something I'd like to submit in the record. It shows the doubling of the elderly. The 85-plus population especially is going to age. Given this, given limited resources, what we hope you are able to do is to direct them to those who are the most frail, those who are the most needy. Placing those senior centers under the Department of Aging puts services where they can do the most for our elderly, and into a department that has special expertise to serve them.
Thank you. Ms. Bush.
Councilman Labange, Councilman Reyes. I'm a member, past president of the Los Feliz Improvement Association, current board member, and vice president of the Friends of the Los Feliz Library. I'm speaking for myself. In poring over the CAO's recommendations of budget, I question the fact that they want to cut 37+ million from the rec and parks and 22+ millions from libraries, $60 million altogether. Burden then placed on the services to people and the open area of Griffith Park and other parks. It is a mystery where that $60 million is going to go. It's not going to serve the public in any way. It's going to go back to apparently Department of Water and Power with no accountability to the public of where it goes. It shows that the benefit cost to the city is only $4 million from the Rec and Parks 37 million cut, and only $2 million from the library cut. Over 5 years, the library cost would be $111 million, and by the CAO's own estimate, only $10 million benefit to the city. I urge you to reject these out of hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the public comment cards for Recreation and Parks, item number 1. Some of you filled out cards for both Aging and Rec and Parks. You'll be called again at that time. I did want to ask this question here, Mr. Reyes. You and I both grew up in Los Angeles. You're absolutely extremely passionate and a man who works extremely hard for the people. You've done tremendous things at MacArthur Park and many other parks in the river. This is difficult times that we're all looking at. We don't want to cut anything, but we know we have to balance a budget, and that budget comes forth. Is anybody in this room that doesn't think there's an economic crisis in the United States, in California, and Los Angeles? I just want to meet them if they're here. So we all realize there's a crisis, and we all realize that we put suggestions up to try to resolve them. Maybe those suggestions aren't the right answers, but it begins the heavy conversation. Does anybody who lives in Los Angeles not pay for their water and live in the city of Los Angeles? Everybody pays for their water. The problem that we have, which I'm going to ask the COO to explain, or maybe the general manager, is a number of rulings have fallen that everybody's got to pay for their utilities, including government itself, which is counterintuitive in my book. And I'm an old water and power guy for a short time, and I want to work with them, which I have engaged in conversations with their water people to try to relax the cost or put it off, especially since it's going to be such a hard hit. But the reality is right now in government, we never had books. Never had books. Post the energy crisis, and I must tell you, they would call from the East Valley generation plant, and they'd call up to San Luis Obispo to PG&E, and they'd say, hey, Maryland, we're cutting down, and we're shutting down number 2 and 3. Could you send us 500 megawatts for the next 3 weeks? We're scrubbing it out. And they'd write it on a piece of paper, and they'd send you the power, and life would go on. Well, accountability and computerization means everything's got to equal. And past city controllers have hammered, we got to make sure everything's equal and business-like. This is the problem with that. We are not a business, we are a service agency. Recreation and Parks is not a business, it's a service agency. But we're being caught up in this whole wave that is trying to make service accountable. Anyway, that all being said, I'd like the CAO and the general manager of the department and his very fine assistant general managers to sit at the table. And I'd also like to ask the CAO, and if you want to sit up here, you can. If you're more comfortable, the department can sit here, whatever you're comfortable for, because they could have more staff. Just explain the issue, because it's new and it is hard for people to understand the requirement that all agencies pay their utility bills. And we're trying to find a solution to that Mr. McDaniels is working on that at Water and Power now, and there's some law behind it. You know that answer?
Good afternoon, Veronica Salumbidas with the Office of the CAO. Just to give you a little bit of background, Charter Section 593 requires an annual appropriation to the Recreation and Parks Fund in an amount not less than 0.0325% of the assessed value of all property as assessed for city taxes.
City property taxes.
Yes. In addition to the charter mandated appropriation, the mayor and council may provide appropriations from the general fund to the Recreation and Parks Fund. And the mayor and council has done that in the past when resources are available. This fiscal year, the budget for Recreation and Parks included a reimbursement of approximately $19.5 million for water and electricity. The city general fund is not obligated to pay for RAP's operating expenses, such as utilities. But mayor and council in the past have chose to pay for those utilities out of the general fund.
But previously, we never got charged for them. And another thing that has to do with this, let me clarify something too, Mr. Muckery. We didn't have water meters on many of our facilities. We had single source meters. So there's a business operation over, and not just in the last 1 or 2 years, but many years. Mr. Muckery, let's put the water and power issue on the table, and let's get to the tough decisions that you and your team have to make and comb through the numbers and see if we can come up with solutions.
Let me touch on this one first, because I was general manager of general services. We always paid city utility bills for every city department in the city. We paid water, we paid power, and we paid gas. We paid it from a general fund. 3 years ago is when we started shifting the burden to the Department of Recreation and Parks.
Other departments as well?
Library, I think, is now being charged their direct utility charges also.
Who pays for the power and water at the East Valley paving plant on Sherman Way? I mean, these are questions too. This is what has transpired. But anyway.
So I just want to make that clear that the city has always received a bill from Water and Power and has always paid the bill. It's just recently that under Charter Section 593, an interpretation was made that now we can charge departments, a library and Rec and Parks, these indirect costs.
Now, I got it. There's the city attorney here. Please investigate that to see if we can revert back to the last century, which is not that long ago, when they didn't have that. See if we could exercise that, Mark, and see what opportunities are there. I do believe, Mr. Muckery, implying it to your department may have something to do with the case between the DWP, community colleges, and LA Unified on charges to water. It may have had that whole operation.
There has been a number of rulings. If you do for one, you have to do for all. And I think that's what you're referring to, other government agencies. If we were to receive some benefit, somebody else is not, then they probably have to extend that to everybody. And I don't know exactly when the case was, but that's my understanding.
But it's in the recent past, but all that.
Mr. Chair, there's one point I wanted to amplify, and it gets to the core of many of these hard decisions in my mind, is that the general fund currently, and the CEO can help me out here, we sustain about 25,000 in personnel in general.
I believe so, yes.
And that's a ballpark number. And of that 25,000, 70% of that goes to public safety, police and fire. Would that be accurate?
That is what the CLA and CO have been saying at every budget meeting.
That's what we've been hearing. And so the remaining number is somewhere between 11 and 13,000 personnel where we have to start finding savings. That's what we've been told.
That's correct.
And so that's where many of these departments are feeling the pressures that are currently being applied and decisions being forced on policymakers as to how we respond to that shortfall we just experienced, where I believe it was $130 million that was not realized in revenue in the past few months.
I don't know exactly. I know this year we're facing in excess $200 million deficit from revenues to expenses. This current year, next year it may go up to almost $400 million. In 2 years out, it could be another $400 to $500 million.
Right. So it's within that context that we're being asked to drill down to this very painful stage, and I say this in a non-cavalier way, so that we can save more jobs in the future. We're trying to regroup here to figure out how we save jobs in the future, and that's the way it's been framed to us. And so therein lies the reason for these hearings and this effort to figure out how we can create revenue, generate revenue, and save jobs now, so we can minimize more cuts later. So I just want to frame it within that context, because this does not come lightly.
No, there's no question, and nobody should come here thinking that we're not in a financial crisis. This city has to do something. 86% of the city's total expenditures are in labor. Unfortunately, labor, I think our men and women of this city should be treated as assets and not liability.
Right.
But when it comes down to it, you have to control or reduce your labor costs to get in line if you're going to make up $200 to $400 to $1 billion over the next 3 years. That's the facts of life. So we are here. We're one of the major departments in the city. I want to tell you we started in 1889. In 1890, the city first appropriated monies as a funding floor for this department. In 1904, we went from a strictly parks department. They created a parallel department, recreation. The recreation department started because there was a public outcry that the kids of this city were not put into a formal recreation. At that time, we had two departments. In 1925, the city charter that we all live under now, as amended, brought those two departments together and started putting in the funding floor, I would call it, from the property tax. So that's a brief history. We should be proud of
The question, not the question on that, but then in 1947, you eliminated the Department of Playgrounds and created Recreation and Park?
You combined since 1925 the two departments into one, and that's when we got into that current formula for the funding floor.
Got it.
We should be proud of the recreation, this department. This department has been a national leader throughout history. I find it comical when I go to committees and in the council and I'm asked by the press to benchmark against another agency. We are the best. We should know that we are the standard everybody else in America is looking at. I just brought last week over the president of a 501 national leader who said that all eyes are on Los Angeles Recreation and Parks now. All eyes in the nation are finding out what we can do. So I come here to tell you some certain facts of life. I will tell you where we are in the budget, what we're going to need to do going forward, and there are going to be service cuts. I was asked in council if it is. Let's shed that if, because we're seeing it now. Our department starts out with an annual appropriation from the general fund property tax that we're discussing, about $140 million. Next year, for some inexplicable reason, it's actually gone up to $141 million. Even in spite of all this, the property values have gone up in L.A. I can only budget to that $141 million. I do make revenues from a variety of other sources, but those revenues are all in jeopardy. And those revenues are used to offset actual costs. I will say we probably get a D- in cost accounting on the revenue side. The $140 million comes to us to subsidize recreation to every citizen of LA. I'm getting tired of hearing from the press and others, you're operating at a loss. The department was created to operate at a loss. It was created to give a subsidy so we can put on licensed child care, so we can put in swim status. Can you imagine the cost to the citizen to even go to one of our swimming pools on full cost recovery? It's not going to happen. It will never happen. So we have $140 million. Roughly $25 million of that is taken on the front end, and that's for utilities and fleet charges. Another $5 million I'm going to be obligated to pay for the early retirement incentive program over the next 2 years. I estimate another $25 million for just, those supplies that we need on an everyday. the stuff that goes in the restrooms, the chemicals that go in the pools, et cetera, the consumable products. So if
Manure.
if you add that all up, really I'm looking at $95 million that we have to spread out on labor. Today, without burdening our costs, we operate probably 17 employees for every $1 million. And that's a healthy mix between full-time and part-time. So you can see that every $1 million, without burdening those costs with indirects, is a large number. If we were to absorb, as one of the white papers is showing, indirect costs, for me to buy employees now, I probably get only 10 employees for every $1 million. It's fact of life. It's probably about 100% when you fully burden for retirements and all these other benefits. And so you can see right now, I am going to be operating with less real money and less people. For instance, 3 years ago, I had 2,100 full-time positions for this department and roughly 8,000 part-time positions in this department. We were large. Almost 10,000 employees received a paycheck every 2 weeks from us. The beginning of this fiscal year, just to keep in the budget as we knew it July 1st, I had to keep 300 vacancies from that 2,100. We just lost 280 roughly in early retirement, and now we're asked to absorb another 125 position loss in what we call the 1,000 total layoff. This department is taking 12.5% of that 1,000 layoff. So it's significant. Then we have to look at, Regina and I, on a daily basis, not only the number of employees we have. I know I'm telling you how to build a watch, and I'm over my 1 minute. I wish I had only 1 minute.
Very good, Mr. I'm taking notes.
But then when we have to program, we have to look at the available work hours each of those employees has remaining. So I may have 1,600 employees or 1,500 employees, but we're also required to take furlough days. You start out with 2,080 hours, you subtract vacations, sick time, jury duty, now you add in our furloughs, and we're probably down to about 1,680 hours per employee that I can budget. And so this is a business. We have over 420 parks in our system. It's a huge business. Any cut we see is going to reduce the services we can provide. Now, what are we doing about it? Regina and I and Barry Sanders and the rest of my staff have been meeting.
Barry's the commission president.
Our commission president. We've been meeting for almost 3 years on these very subjects. What we can do, because we've been seeing cuts over the last 3 years. And we're going to do a building block approach. The mayor's requested that all general managers put together on a priority list everything you do, priority 1 down to whatever it falls to. We'll attach a dollar amount to that. And once we get down to that critical 90 million, 92 million, we will then see some cuts. Now, I'll be the first to tell you I've been fighting for equity in the city. It's going to be a sawtooth. There are going to be some areas in the city where we are the only providers of a service, a gym, a pool. We will keep that open. I'm making that commitment to you now. We will we'll GIS map it against the median incomes. We'll have all the parks listed, and we'll look at other service providers in the area, and if we are the only one, we will provide that service. Let's talk about golf, because I hear golf makes money, it loses money, it breaks even. We subsidize every function in rec and parks, golf included. They get a subsidy. And I'm making a promise today, and I've told the mayor this, that I will make golf 100% enterprise by July 1st. The only way to do that is to increase my green fees. I have to, and we pay $1 million a year. If I can do that, then truly I will save between $5 to $7 million that we do in subsidies. And that goes to the crux of the problem. That's utilities, indirects, et cetera, that we do. I'll take that $7 million that I'm now paying and put it back into the recreation program. We're going to be looking across the board on other things. We're going to be looking at, it's not just saving jobs. We got to put a dollar to the services that we provide. And we need to know why we're providing that service. It's I firmly believe if you look at the history of this department, you're going to find we're as much as public safety as any agency. In the 1940s, I said this in council, we also were designated our parks a safe refuge during a time of war. We are still that safe refuge in natural disasters. Sunland Rec Center was opened during the recent rains and floods out of a necessity and a need to provide that safe haven. And so you can see that it's not, when we look at rec and parks, I don't want people just to focus on golf balls and volleyballs, but these are people's lives out there. These are after-school programs. And so you've hired me, and you've kept me here, and you've asked me the tough questions to come to you, working with the CAO and the mayor, when they tell us, John, at the end of the day, the city's in a financial crisis. This is what you have to operate with. We will come up with a plan to you, and it's not going to be pretty. I will tell you right now, the issues we face with licensed child care is just the first ripple in a huge tsunami. And I don't know any way to tell you any different to any of you.
Mr. Buckley, thank you very much. I'm going to turn over to Mr. Reyes in a moment. I have one question, but then I'm going to turn to Mr. Reyes. If you ran an organization, and I'll just say a food restaurant establishment like a McDonald's, they could print up and tell you the store on Fountain and Sunset Boulevard cost you X and made Y. All their locations. And I know the why of what you made is priceless because you've affected young people, seniors, families by your park. So I'm not worried about the why, but do you have a list that says what it costs to operate Pan Pacific, what it costs to operate South Park, what it costs to operate Eagle Rock Yosemite Center, what it costs to operate Griffith Park as a whole, etc.? And I say that with the CAO because if we don't have that information, I understand, but we should transfer that knowledge, and at the same time, how many people, as I told Mr. Reyes, who is again, and I do compliment you, Ed, when I came last Friday night, I went to Queen Anne Park for the open of Wilshire softball. Recreation and Parks works well. If there's a non-discriminatory open program, you work with them, Toluca Baseball, whatever, to help run a program. Wilshire Baseball's girls softball, Pan Pacific opens their doors to them. Queen Anne opened up. 500 people there Friday night. I don't think there was a public space open with 500 people anywhere. 1,000 people when I passed MacArthur Park. 700 people at Lafayette Park waiting for that skate park to be finished and all that other work. So we know that's there. But do we have the numbers? Because I think what we have to do, and maybe I'm a little at fault as chair, I've been doing this for a little while, is to prove to others you're part of the equation of success of a city, that we know there's hundreds and thousands of people. And the other thing I did want to mention too, John, some parks do draft other kids in from other neighborhoods because of the ability to service them, and also they feel maybe there's a newer playground or a gym. That all being said, do you have a list that says Silverlake Rec Center cost last year to operate, fiscal year 08-09, $938,000, or no? I'm just guessing the number.
Not to the level of detail that we would need to run a business, because within every rec center there's various programs. We're finding out the hard way the state is cutting out subsidies. We're finding out the hard way LA Unified is pulling programs out of our centers that have been part of the equation. What we will have, what I can tell you we will have shortly, is we will have that data, what it costs to run parks in various large, medium, small parks. And then you'll have a laundry list of programming elements that equate to cost factor. But I'll be honest with you, I've been here at the city for only 15 years, and I'll tell you, our cost accounting system in the current financial management system is not good.
I got that, but that's something we could work on because they're good to post. Let me turn over to Mr. Reyes and Val.
And perhaps what you just said is probably the answer that will probably be given, but when I look at Taylor Yard, for example, of the 40 new acres of park space, 20 acres is active. Of those 20 acres, we have several soccer fields, and we've engaged the subject before, and we talked about this a couple of years ago. it's not uncommon to find other soccer leagues from other parts of the county, other parts of the area that don't even live in Los Angeles who are paying to use these facilities. And so did we ever get to a point where we were able to control and or determine the value of that time with all these new facilities that we are building? Vista Hermosa, another, 15, 20 acres? I mean, there's close to 80 acres of new park space in the inner city in the past 10 years, 8 years. And when you look at the reciprocation of use by those who don't live in the city and are dealing with this underground cottage industry, that's a lot of money that we're losing. Have we been able to capture that, and have we put together a system that allows us to track that kind of use in these facilities?
The answer is yes. We're getting better and better. You're talking, there's a number of issues that you're saying. RFEs based on recovery for non-residents, probably not. We're looking at that. We're looking at how we permit. We're looking at enforcing permits, because even the council member did not say this. We know even today, people are pulling permits, paying maybe $8 an hour for a field, and then on the secondary market making $500 or $600 for that same hour. We know that. And as we catch people, we are prosecuting them. We just prosecuted one of our own employees who had their finger in the till. They're now doing 2 years in prison. We understand that we have got to be in charge of our fields. We know that. And I can assure you we're going to get better.
Is there a guesstimation of revenue that we can look at in terms of?
I don't have that, but I promise you I'll bring in a comparables. What if you were leasing private land, we'll bring it into you.
Another layer of questions, and it's more about how we begin to isolate function and how you look at the notion of priority when it comes to revenue generation functions versus other positions that we can't pay for. Are you in a position to start looking at it from that point of view?
We do have some revenue generators, but that are standalone, if that's the question, like the Greek Theater and some others, that they actually pay for themselves and generate a positive cash flow. Just about everything else we do in recreation parks, service delivery, is operated at a loss.
But in terms of managers and personnel functions, if you look at an organizational chart, and every park has their organizational chart, and it's like an umbrella within an umbrella, and you start looking at all these pieces, what functions actually are engaged in revenue versus those that should be, and then understanding that we don't want to cut off the very same part of your body that's going to help you survive.
Very good question, and to be honest with you, I didn't get into this detail, but I want to tell you about our management structure, just to put everybody at ease. I cut out 25% of my senior executive management over the last 3 years. We went down from 20 to 15. Early retirement, the 280 took another 63% of my middle managers. Our tooth-to-tail ratio right now is in line with our workforce. What I need to do now is start backfilling the holes and do exactly what you're suggesting I do, is do a business model and find out what positions and where they should be for those very same reasons. Some will generate revenue.
When you look at technology and the multiple purposes that you can find in one person, because you have the ability to communicate, you've got various means by which you can capture data, hold people accountable. A picture here can be transferred, emailed to someone over there. You don't need to be driving and losing time and looking at the logistics that, it's not uncommon for me I hate to say this, but I'll find a Rec and Parks truck somewhere and I'm asking, what's he doing here? And it's not in a place where you would expect them to be. And I'll approach him, I'll say, hey, how's it going? And we have a conversation and they don't have an answer. And I'm embarrassed by it.
And we all should be. And thank you for doing that. I know we asked the same question. One of the things, unfortunately, that's going to happen is our workforce is going to become more mobile. We're going to rely on the mobile workforce.
No, what I'm suggesting, though, is that the GPS system will track where people are, what it's supposed to be, and how much time they spent where. And so when you talk about efficiencies, All I'm asking is, are we beginning to look at merging these functions because technology allows us to work much more under the guise of accountability?
We'll look at everything. I was one of the first general managers. When I came to the city in '95, I was surprised we didn't have GPS on our vehicles to do the snail trail, so you could tell where everybody was, what routes they were doing, etc. But there are some other issues with that, working with the bargaining units and the such, but the technology is there to do that. We know that.
Okay. I'll stop. Thank you.
No,
All right, if you could, for the next few minutes, give us a rundown. Right now, let's say we were talking to the police department, we could break them down, a number of officers in uniform working in divisions, special assignments, etc. You project your fiscal year starting July 1st this year. What will you authorize the number of employees?
Regina Adams, Executive Officer of Recreation and Parks. We were authorized 1,992 full-time positions.
All right, and what are you projecting right now for July 1st, 2000?
We're probably going to be under 1,300.
1,300, which is a massive change. How do you plan to move forward with only 1,300 individuals? And we're not counting special programs or camps right at the moment, but we'll discuss that in a minute, or pools. Just the rec centers, and for everybody, and some who may be listening here, you have over 300 facilities, not all are recreation centers, but give us a breakdown of what your inventory is of service.
It's funny, we do have that. Acres of parkland is approaching 16,000 citywide. Parks, 417. Children's play areas, 368. Universal access playgrounds, 12. Recreation centers, 183. Ball fields, 256. Soccer fields, 56. Swimming pools, 60. 11 lakes, 7 camps, 12 museums, 26 licensed child care facilities, 3 therapeutic sites, 31 senior citizen centers, 9 skate parks, 321 tennis courts, 13 golf courses, 9 dog parks, and hundreds of miles of hiking trails. So,
okay, so with that and said, you have 1,300 employers. The first, what could we look for? What tough decisions you got to bring forth? You're going to close parks some days? Right now, are every park open 7 days a week?
Yes, we do close some on holidays and certain other days. But you could say, first up, every park will remain open 365 days.
You could walk on the park.
You're correct. And so when you're looking at priorities for the city, if you were asking me, John, you're running that business, I have to look at risk and liability.
Right.
And risk and liability, since the parks are open, is grounds maintenance. Number one would be we have to keep grounds maintenance. Since we have so many children's play areas and sand pits, we need to rake those every day. The very last thing we want is the kid to have a syringe, nails, glass.
Right.
Every single
glass, etc.
Okay, so if you're asking me right on the front end is how do we limit and the citizens of LA from future lawsuits, just maintain what we have. And then you start going down, and what are the program elements? Should we open up a rec center 7 days a week? Should we have all the rec centers open 7 days a week? Should we look at areas within the city that have a greater need and keep those open at the expense of those in higher areas where there are boys clubs, girls clubs, Ys, and other people providing that service? Those are all the things that we've been working on.
Can you ask that if there's other organizations, could they run those buildings? Could you make indemnify them, the city indemnify, to say that if you have so much staff and you want to put the staff where there's a greater need, but you don't want a vacant building sometimes gets vandalized. Could you say, and I'll just throw this name out, the Hollywood Boys and Girls Club take over Cole Recreation Center?
There's nothing to stop us from entering into agreement.
If that works out, but that's a long-term thing if that happened. But what your intent is to try to keep these facilities open, but at a much reduced schedule.
Well, right now, I don't think anybody can react quick enough to the cuts we're going to be forced to take. So I think we're kind of kidding ourselves to think that we can suddenly bring in a partner. I've entered into discussions with a lot of groups. We have Mike Schul and my planning group will be having a standardized agreement. The issue that you touched upon, and briefly I want everybody to know, is the indemnification. These will always remain city facilities. Once it's dedicated parkland, it's a dedicated parkland. It will never be sold. So it becomes an issue of risk. How much risk are we going to accept from a nonprofit in our building, and how much are we going to require them to have?
But when we look at this gap, because we're talking about a significant number of decrease in personnel, and working with the unions and talking about coordinating a volunteer corps, looking at different ways in which engage the local schools, et cetera. I mean, there's different strategies here. I mean, I have principals of high schools asking me, I've got 40 students, they need to do X number of weeks of volunteer work, where can they go? Then we send them out, and they do cleanups, and they do different things. So there are those types of relationships that I know you're referring to. Have we had that environment at that level per park to have managers look at these strategies? Has that conversation occurred yet?
I would say yes. We have well over 400 agreements with various agencies throughout our park system, and we have joint use agreements. We have use agreements with the school. We have hundreds of them. Some are working better than others, and some we need to work on. We have over, I've been saying 13,000 volunteers in our department right now, but I think we even have more of that. These are registered volunteers, and I need to make a distinction. It's not, we do not allow anybody just to come on our thing. We have so much liability when we have children that we need to, all these are fingerprint and background check. And they have to pass our scrutiny before we allow them to do this. We use court referrals already today. We've been using court referrals ad infinitum to clean up parks like at Peck Park in San Pedro. There is no way, I cannot see it today, any way to offset $50 million in cuts with these Band-Aids. I'm going to have to sit down and negotiate with our bargaining units and outside agencies on what we are willing to do. We need to look at what the service delivery.
What requirement is that to do? Meaning, let's just say it again, let's say at Recreation Center at Hollywood, which is not in my district, but I pick it because it's right up the street from a building which houses the Boys and Girls Club of Hollywood. Let's say to make a decision, you say, okay, there's a service provider in the area. Can we partner with them? Can Mike Scholl develop a standardized form? Can it be identified that the legal issues solved Mark Brown and the city attorney? Then the question goes forth, how can you create these partnerships to continue? Because in essence you may have to put locks on the doors of your building.
Well, that is a truism.
Right.
The Charter Section 1022 has a provision on what work can and should be done by city employees, and we have to give them currently, under the current rules, the unions that represent that function, the ability to provide that function. Now, we all know we can't afford that. I can't afford to bring on more city employees. I'm in a catch-22.
All right, but that's something we have to look at and work with everybody to try to do that, but I think we're going to identify it. You are going to keep bathrooms open and clean to the extent of what you could service them?
Not to get into any detail, that may be a no. I can't tell you every restroom we have open in our park facilities will be open next year. But I can assure you the amount of cleaning will decrease. I can assure you that.
Do you allow court referrals to clean your bathrooms?
We use court referrals, and yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we use court referrals, we use volunteers. It's most times on the scale that we're talking about, for a department of this size, these onesies and twosies volunteer efforts do work, but they're marginal effort. You yourself know when we have a 3-day weekend at Griffith Park, those trash cans are overflowing on Monday afternoon.
I'm going to turn back over to Mr. Reyes in a moment there, but I think a lot of people here want to be our partner in some way, shape, or form, too, that we have to be very creative, because the reality is that there's only so much money to assign to you to pay for the people who've done the work. And I do not believe the people of Los Angeles want to raise their taxes. Does anybody want to raise the taxes in this room? Okay. Who says that? Okay? One person wants to raise their taxes, 2, 3, 4 people. 5 people want to raise the taxes. All right, and then the gentleman who lives on the street near Griffith Park, your neighbor pays different than you do because of Prop 13, which is an equity in itself, but no one wants to touch Prop 13. I see our fine city engineer giving a shake-up of that problem that may set this course. I just want to say that I am committed, as Mr. Reyes, if I could say that, to find creative solutions for our parks, for our people, from 1 to 101. There's no better program than 90-plus luncheon that you put on with the Department of Aging at Friendship Auditorium, which Rec and Parks has been a leader in, which I first met Vicki in when we both were young. All those things were so important. You're still young, Vicki, I'm just saying that. All those things are real important, but we have to think that. I just want to see some sketch from Recreation and Parks of what, I think you said it earlier, organizational chart and what we could do. And also, if it means restricting, and I know what, for you to run an operation, you need 8.5 hours to run an operation, if it's a full-time operation, or what, if a rec center is open, is it open from 2 to 10? Because people are in school, but then you have the challenge of seniors who may share the building, because aging doesn't own buildings, so you got to open at 10 to 10.
Thank you.
Right.
Therein is the problem.
Right.
We normally open up between 8 and 9 in the morning for a variety of things, and we stay up till 8, 9, or 10, depending on the facility, for a variety of reasons. So we do have about a 12-hour window every day of the week that we have a center or a group of centers open. What I want to assure this committee and the other council members is that we were going to take this all into account. We're going to use GIS technology. We're going to map it. We're going to look at what services we provide. We're going to look at why we provide it. We're going to look at where we provide it. I will sit down individually with each one of your staffs to go over your desires. What are your needs?
Let me do this for you. Let me just suggest this ahead of you. I think we should assign a deputy or make it available to sit down with you. You're running. We should work with you to help you create this, and they can have direct conversation and access, because this is a piece of work that's in movement right now. So I just ask that instead of having to come and sit down with 15 individuals, let's put a working group of 15 deputies who work with our parks. Excuse me? Deputies, we used to do that all the time, Mark. He can't talk to 15 council deputies?
I'm talking about policy.
Not policy.
I'm talking about getting feedback.
Hey, come up here, Mr. City Attorney. You've been sitting in the back smoking cigarettes.
This is not coming in.
I thought that was a cigar.
Yeah, right. No, it wasn't. For those of you who are listening to us, we're teasing Mark Brown.
Mark Brown, Senior Assistant City Attorney. The only thing I'm cautioning is against creating a working group of all deputies.
An advisory group? An advisory group?
If it's an advisory group, yes. So it's fine to have individual discussions with individual council offices. That's not a problem, and not to share between the council offices what you've told.
No, I think it could be in a public discussion. Maybe whatever, it's your commission or whatever. I'm just saying there's a fire going on, and we have to attack the fire, and I think that to expedite all resources, trying to put everybody in the same room to have a discussion on that, but we'll take the city attorney's advice.
If you observe the Brown Act rules, you could...
Observe the Brown Act rules or whatever they are.
I'm suggesting that we all become partners in these decisions as we go forward. Right. I need the council offices to know their districts. I need the CAO to tell me what's going on. I need the mayor's office to get our priorities. This is not a John Muckery solution to a budget problem. This is a city solution. I need the community members that we engage on a daily basis, because when all is said and done, in 4 short weeks or 5 weeks, we're going to have a new budget for next fiscal year.
Right. And it gets to, again, what I want to emphasize is understanding your time frames. We have spoken a lot about strategies and made recommendations, but ultimately we have to see something that you think is going to work.
That's correct.
And when do you see that happening?
I already made a commitment, I'm going to spin off golf, make them an enterprise fund. You're going to see things that...
Explain to the public, we know that is, so Sally Newbauer knows, so
that
everybody knows.
there is not 1 cent of city money going in to support golf operations. It's going to be, they're going to have to rely on their own green fees and concession agreements that they have. That service, I believe, will cost more, but it will remain under the purview of the city in the short term. The city employees that are currently working there will be paid for from the revenue. Their benefit package will be paid for by the revenue, so it won't impact the city coffers by 1 cent. They'll be spun off. So now, we are now getting into that point in time where I can look at the numbers, because heretofore we had 280 EREFs. I didn't know if all 280 were going to leave, maybe 270 were going to leave, maybe 240. I didn't know I was going to be hit with 125 other positions, either through layoffs and or transferring these people to fully funded positions. These 4 jigsaw puzzles that were thrown at me, and then half of the pieces taken out, and you're saying, come up with a plan, or show me the picture. We're getting to that point now. And that's why I brought in my staff this past weekend. We started the 1st. I'm going to take them away for a weekend. We're going to sit down. We're going to develop these plans around the numbers we know. Okay. Now, I have to be honest with you. If we are hit with another round of layoffs, whatever plan I come up, I might as well throw it out the window.
Got you. Now, the reason why I'm raising this so that we can start assessing, okay, are we too close to the problem where we can't see objectively other strategies? And that we won't know until you come up with your strategy.
I think
come up with your plan.
I'm open to anybody's idea at this point in time. People call me at home morning, noon, and night.
Right.
They send me emails. I have a very good relationship with many people. They don't always agree with me. I have to be honest with you.
I know the
Some
feeling.
of the people that spoke vehemently about the importance of the park have spoken with me offline on issues they didn't like about the management. I think, but it's the broad understanding that parks are important to the future.
Right.
Our parks are a cultural and community process. They are part of the fabric of this city.
Right.
They cannot go away. And that's what you're asking me to do, is come up with a plan under this financial crisis to continue to provide those services that are necessary, and we will do that.
Probably from one of the most poor districts in the city, I completely support you in what you want to get done. I think it's the question is how and when.
I need to come up with something in the next 4 weeks.
Right.
I'll be honest with you, I just had a meeting with the mayor's office. We just started doing GIS mapping, looking at income levels, and we will superimpose now parks and programs on an individual level throughout the entire 420 square miles of this city. And we will be making decisions based on the need and necessity for that program, and have a strategy where we have a priority list. Once we meet this golden number, 92 million, 100 million, whatever it comes out to be, the cupboard's bare.
Okay.
That's as much as we can afford to do.
Okay, we'll take it one step at a time. Thank you.
Could you, in the next 4 weeks, could you find one general session on an afternoon, maybe somewhere centrally located, easy parking, to invite neighborhood councils, of which many have park committees, to at least come and be part of it, the CPABs, the park advisory groups, et cetera, because I think it's important, because we are in a very difficult time. Last night, I stood before a community for 2 hours trying to answer all the questions. Some of the questions I couldn't answer, some of them they didn't like the answers, et cetera, on the case may be. But I think it would be incumbent of us to do that. Is that a violation of anything?
I've already committed some weekends to meet. I've told Stephen Box, he's putting together a group of people from the neighborhood councils.
So we'll get to the people who are at your parks. And I'm not, no disrespect to Mr. Box, but there's people who, and I would just tell you from my, and Ed, you may have a feeling on this too, there are people who are in neighborhood councils, there are people in neighborhood associations, and there are people at the parks. And the people at the libraries, Marilyn, the friends groups don't necessarily go to the park groups, who don't let them go to the neighborhood councils. Let's get the people who are focused mainly on the parks, those 23,000 volunteers that you so are proud of. and look at that.
I have 4 weeks to meet, and we will have a
And I'll
plan.
help you on that as chair if you
I
want to do
understand,
anything.
but I have 4 weeks to do this. We will have a plan. I understand fully well that we are going to have to modify it and as we go forward.
Right.
I also want to, again, impress upon you that even though the city's budget starts July 1st, our summer programming starts in the next couple of months. So there are a lot of decisions, plans that we're making right now that are going to cross fiscal years.
I got it, but you assured me in council in full session that we will have camps this year.
There's no doubt in my military mind, we will have a variety of
And we will have pools,
We'll have
except for
pools.
3 pools that you think won't be able to be open.
Well, I can tell you right now, there's some misinformation given to Councilmember Reyes. Lincoln Park will not open this summer.
Okay.
Physically, it cannot open. But we will have pools open. This is the discussions I need to have with the council office. That community who wants to have access to the pool, I will have to come up with some type of movement plan, transportation plan, to take them to another closer pool. And I
Right.
promise you, I will sit down and work with it.
Good, all right, very good. All right, now we're going to keep this in committee. We may have to report on part of this to council before the end of this month. But we'll ask for a report back, in progress report if we could. But the council, Mr. Parks, the chairman of finance, asked that all these discussions come back to full council possibly next week. So be on the call list for that. And I will just read this off to you. This is Bridget and I, my wife, own a home in Silverlake. And we pay $5,121.96 for taxes, of which that $755 to vector control, emergency trauma for the county, that's the 911 system, $149, $103.49, $18 plus for LA City Prop K, I believe that is. 473-9702, is that you, Neil? 473-9702? County Park District, it's a county prop? Yeah. Okay, good. County Parks is another $20, $31 for flood control, 911 call fund from LA City 24, stormwater, that's Prop O. We should probably list the propositions that are on here. Prop K, Prop O is $24. Unified is $608.48. $92 for our community college. Metropolitan Water, $17. And for the city of Los Angeles, voter indebtedness is, which would be $165. And the general taxes is $4,008 on that, which brings to the total of $51.21. The point I'm making there, out of that general indebtedness is the .0001 that Veronica spoke of, which is your base of $75 million?
Yes, 140.
$140 million. And your budget is?
177.
170, so it's that gap there. So, okay, a challenge. Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Ms. Israel, do you want to say anything?
No, we appreciate all of your support.
Well, thank you, Mr. Reagan.
I echo that. We thank the council for their
Mr.
support.
Adams, thank you very much. John, we'll talk to you on that. Anybody want to stretch, they can stretch right now. We're going to go to item number 2, which is our housing issue. All those who signed in, if you sign in and want to be notified of the next meeting on this subject, please let us know. This is continued discussion. Hello? Hello? Okay. I'm in the town. I have no news. I got to get out, and I'll call you. Where are you? God, good. Talk to you. I hope you're okay. Bye-bye. Okay. This will be... Take a break? Yeah. It's a good thing. We should have a meeting, stay late with them just to break this down. I had that with Patty in the past week. That's something I would suggest. That's a good suggestion. Without all the, I always have 6 days. But literally, I'm waiting for the template from the state of CLAs to help us move the information together. Okay, everybody, recess is over. Now we're going to call item number 2. Eric, I got it. Mr. Reagan, would you please, you're dismissed from this room.
That's what I read off. There's more.
Thank you very much.
No.
I need one of those.
And item number 2 is a discussion of the Los Angeles Department of Aging's current budget, the department's submittal for 2010-11 budget, the impact of the early retirement incentive program, possible restructuring of department operations, and other related matters.
We're going to have a department give an opening presentation, and then we'll also ask, Mr. Reggie, you're going to stay for the aging presentation, which would be good. I know some of the other Rec and Park staff have to go, but you could hear this here, because I would just say, I know one wants to be consolidated, but I think, and again, Mr. Reyes, correct me if I'm wrong, service is what counts, and if we find homes for people that continue to be able to do the service and expand it, that's what our interest is. Ms. Trejo?
Good afternoon, council members. Laura Trejo, General Manager for the Department of Aging. Accompanied today by James Vaughn, our Assistant General Manager. We provided to you presentation materials that are included in your packets. I wanted to start by sharing with you really the goal, the basic goal of the Department of Aging is to assist older people in Los Angeles to age well in place with the supportive services they need to stay as independent as possible living in our communities. As all of you are aware, we are facing a major demographic imperative in not only Los Angeles, but in our nation. We project that between the next 20 years, we will see an increase of 70% of the number of older persons over the age of 60 in the greater Los Angeles County region, which is something to be very aware of as we're making these shifts right now. I think they present an opportunity for positioning the city in a much stronger position as we move forward. Contrary to popular belief, most older people want to stay in the communities that they've always lived. They're not really a transitory or migrant population. Most people we're experiencing that citywide, where we're seeing naturally occurring retirement communities, where older people have aged in place. It's really challenging us as a department and our providers to begin to look at how we are structured in terms of the offerings we provide in services and supports. Just to give you a couple of data bits, more than 80% of seniors in the city of Los Angeles over the age of 65 suffer from a chronic condition, and over 68% of older people over the age of 60 participate in little or no physical activity. I mentioned that one because physical activity for older people is a major factor in their health and well-being overall. We are aware that we're experiencing a demographic shift. We believe that the chartered authority of the Department of Aging created the position for the city to create an infrastructure that would serve the citizens of Los Angeles well. It gives the department the authority to plan, to coordinate, to organize services, and to really be the impetus for the design of response to this growing population. The Department of Aging is an independent department. We also hold a designation as an area agency on aging. We are one of 33 in California and one of over 500 across the nation. That is a federal designation that allows us to draw down our federal funds. Part of the goal of an area agency on aging is to make it possible for older adults to remain in their homes and communities as long as possible. The Department of Aging is structured, and you have an org chart, a brief one there for your information. We are a very lean operation. All of our managers are actually managers that are not only supervising divisions, but are also carrying responsibility for managing individual programs, contracts, et cetera. We have approximately 56 authorized positions right now with a salary cost of...
Of the 56, how many from the general fund?
85% of all our positions are funded by grants.
Thank you.
15% by general fund. Basically, we look at all of our positions as for their opportunity to draw down outside resources. We work very hard to leverage the city's general fund. We actually use it also as in prioritizing. We always try to bill a grant before we will bill to the general fund. I believe council a week and a half ago took action to reappropriate $150,000 in salary savings because we have been very, very judicious at doing that. We have notified all of our funders, for your information, that we are hoping to move our department over the coming years into full recovery under the grants because we believe that as resources become available, we will be in a position to do that. So we have begun the process already last July of notifying them that we plan to do that.
Technical question. In the last 36 months, has the CAO's office sat across the table and said, I got a strategy to take this general fund position and try to create recovery to get it off the general fund. Has there been much engagement in the last 36 months, or has it just been in the last 6 to 12 months?
As a department, because we have a proportion of grants that primarily fund our staff positions,
Right.
that has not been a discussion that I have had with the CAO directly. We are always looking at all of our positions.
Right. I know, but we got to look at it more, is that. Laura, that'd be good on that. James, you got anything you want to add?
In terms of James Down, in terms of our budget, the department actually operates a $35.8 million group of programs. And of that total funding amount, only about 3% is actually represented by the general fund for the department operations. The majority of the general funds that we receive are actually for direct services, such as our home-delivered meals, dining centers, adult daycare programs.
Very well.
I did want to have...
Please.
I did want to add, because I appreciated the question council members were asking Mr. Muckrey in terms of data and comparing. In your materials, we did do an exercise of comparing side to side, because we do contract with the Department of Recreation and Parks. We wanted to provide that information to council to show that that there are efficiencies that are possible. I would like to work very closely with Mr. Muckrey to see where we can find those efficiencies on behalf of the senior services that Rec and Parks operate, because we believe with our partners in the community that we work with, we have some potential to realize efficiencies that we have not to this date been able to put in place. So there is a real opportunity here, I think, to not only maintain service levels, but also to ensure their sustainability over time. So my hope would be that as you review that information, we would be open to questions from the council offices regarding the ability that we have to work with our partners in the community to leverage resources. As Councilmember Reyes stated earlier from Dr. Sarkeesian's letter, it's just an example of the millions of dollars that we have been able to leverage by working with both universities and community-based organizations that enrich the service offerings that we provide through our network. The general funds create a real opportunity for us to be able to do matching to grants. And
Right.
so,
Well, let me ask you this question, and it speaks to this notion of leveraging that you're pointing to. When you look at the multiplier effect, when you have certain personnel within your department that fulfill certain functions, there is a dollar amount as a result of that effort. Do you have the ability to quantify that?
yeah, it's 85% of the staff resources are paid for by our grants.
Okay.
And so we are leveraging 15% of city resources against 85% of outside resources.
So this discussion about...
Very leveraged.
Okay, but this discussion of merging, how does that impact that capacity?
One of my concerns that I would have would be that because the staff is already so highly attached to grant resources, there's really not anything they can do in addition to for other things, because that money is very much categorically encumbered. So those folks that are...
So these are legal obligations.
They are. And so if you're charging to this grant, you can't be doing something else during the same time. That's part of the complexity and the delicacy in balancing these resources. It's not that they can be applied or generalized to another function, because they have to be accounted to the funders. And we are reviewed, because we have our own contracts, to ensure that that takes place.
And I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but I think we need to put everything on the table. And I'm going to use an example. You have one department that has their own GIS system. They have their own approach, because that's the way that management wants to have it. You have another department that has the same result with a different GIS system, because that's the way they want to control it. It's an issue of control. It's an issue of maintaining these silos because of that notion of it's my decision and I want to be in charge of it. And it goes back to control. Now, when you look at this issue, you have this wave of activity that is as a result of these funding sources and their obligations. So in my mind, the question is, how long does that obligation exist? And to what extent do you continue moving so that you maintain that personnel while delivering the service. Are we talking about phases that you're in right now? Is it a permanent?
Our Older Americans Act dollars have been with the city for almost 40 years now.
Okay.
And so we don't anticipate that those would go away while we have older people in our nation who will advocate for those resources. We actually have been working very diligently on the national level with the current administration to increase the grant amounts to the Older Americans Act. Currently in the president's budget, he's allocated over $100 million, which would be about a 13% increase in the total allocation to older adult programs nationally. We're very pleased because we've been working very hard to increase that percentage, because it comes back, everything is formula driven to the local area agencies in terms of population. We're also very involved with the census right now to make sure everybody gets counted.
But when you look at what the CAO is advising us as policymakers, they're saying you have this gap. It's 150, 100, whatever that, it's a big number.
Yes, it is.
And you have so much personnel that we can no longer sustain. And so now, to keep from going bankrupt, and to keep from a panel of judges from literally just pulling out our budget and redlining everything we can't pay for, and leaving whatever core services they feel should be left, that's the cliff we're trying to avoid from falling off of.
I appreciate that. If you refer to the handout that I gave you, on the last page, you have two slides, 33 and 34. We actually did a side-by-side comparison of the cost to operate, one person, one FTE at a senior center versus one FTE at a multipurpose center, which is within our network. And as you can see, because of the city's cost burden, we actually could show an efficiency of $1.3 million in terms of our provider network's ability to deliver the same level of staff. When you compare two MPCs, very similar populations, very similar makeup in terms of their service, you see that the city's investment is actually at a much higher level, yet when you look at our provider in the aging network, they're delivering a higher level of core services for us because of their ability to leverage other resources and their lower cost overhead overall.
See, my own take on this is that I think this department should sustain its autonomy to the degree that it reflects a specialized service. The senior population is a very complicated one in terms of how you define independence, because every person has their own sense of independence on how they want to be independent, and that's an array of services. In my other life, I did work on long-term care facilities, and I did help create residencies and programs to sustain that. So I'm familiar with those intricacies and what state requires in terms of its codes and all the other. You start going through it's just layers and layers of issues. So to establish efficiencies is what we're looking for, and how we can get to a dollar figure that allows us to sustain the personnel that you need that has these types of returns is, I think, the critical question. And that's the dialogue that has to occur right now, because decisions have to be made by June or for the next year if we're going to keep from falling off that cliff. And so I understand what you're saying here, but how does that answer the question the CEO puts in front of us? How are we going to pay for it?
Well, we believe that part of the work of the Department of Aging, as it is currently structured by federal law, makes us a very efficient operation to deliver the bulk of services. The majority of our dollars are indirect services in the community. And so we believe that the investment the city currently has, and I understand that it may be less in the future, that funding allows us to leverage additional grant resources that we bring in. That's how we partner with to leverage the $7 million in the grants that we've been working with Dr. Sarkeesian on. That's how we leverage our resources that we're working with Ms. Simmons at Partners in Care. We utilize the limited investment that the city provides to us to be able to then draw down a multiplier of almost 1 to 10 in terms of the return on investment for the city. So we believe that as a small entity, we are very efficient utilizers of our limited resources. We do not have a large burden in terms of our staff. They're very specialized and they're multitaskers. And we have the capacity to be able to move staff resources to address existing opportunities. And that's what we do really well. Part of my concern of being in a larger organization, is that we would lose some of those efficiencies. And that will impact our ability to draw down additional resources. And I think that's also a policy decision council has to make.
And if it's just, if there was, you made some very strong points and very strong arguments. Is there something else you want to share with this committee to make sure it's on the record so that as we move forward, we know how to weigh these factors?
That I'm hoping that as the policymakers make these decisions, they take into consideration that the decisions we're making now will have a tremendous effect in the coming years. This is the first year that the boomers have come of age. This is a demographic tidal wave that will be here. Los Angeles is the home to the second largest concentration of older people in the United States. We will be at the forefront. If we are basically diluting any of the capacity of our aging network in the coming months or years, we will have an effect that will be felt for years to come in our community. I can tell you one of the things I've been reviewing is a blueprint plan that council very wisely requested for aging services in 2000. They predicted almost all of this, and their concerns at that time that the city needed to take some really aggressive steps to ensure that older adult services were being really coordinated, planned for, and thoughtfully integrated. And so I think that we're here. I see that as an opportunity to fulfill some of those recommendations. I see it as an opportunity for two departments to sit down and work together to see how we can leverage each other's strengths. I think that's where the strength is in our independence at this point.
And has that
we are able to do things that under a larger structure we would not be able to do.
Have you had that conversation yet, or started a conversation with the respective
We have
departments?
discussion, and we have always worked very well together.
Okay.
So that's been an ongoing discussion in terms of how we can best utilize our existing resources. We actually have meetings for all senior center directors. We had one yesterday at the Expo Center. We have been doing that for over 3 years now.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. I just wanted to ask the CAO and Ms. Trejo, what does the county do? Does the county have a Department of Aging?
Yes, they do. The Department of Community and Senior Services.
And how do they work with Parks and Recreation?
Less effectively than we do. They are actually...
The county organization.
Yes, we partner with them very closely, and actually Mr. Muckley has been very much part of our leadership team in working with the Department of Recreation and Parks at the county to make sure that we're working together.
And what does Long Beach or Pasadena do?
Pasadena has an independent senior center. They're actually a nonprofit.
One center in the whole town?
One center is a Pasadena Senior Center, and they're an independent not-for-profit. Long Beach is the city of Long Beach houses also their own senior programs very independently, but they do work in collaboration with the county.
With the parks. Very good. We want to look at that aspect. Thank you very much, Veronica. We're okay with that. Now, we have public comment coming up, unless staff wants to address anything. Okay. My goal is to keep you independent. But my goal, Mr. Reyes, our goal is to keep the city solvent. If your services continue, but the overhead is removed for whatever reason, even though it's 15 people, that's something that we have to look at. Our goal is the people we serve. So that is the key.
We share that goal with you.
All right, let me get the public comment. It will be a 1-minute clock. From St. Barnabas, Tina Hume, Larry Lisby, Erica Lozado, and Virgie Walker. Thank you for coming. Why don't you sit here? Look at this, Ed. You gotta get in. Wait here. You're in there twice.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Tina Hummel, and I work for St. Barnabas Senior Services, 67 South Karen DeLay. And I believe that it would be very advantageous to have the Department of Aging consolidate with Parks and Recreations, because Department of Aging has the expertise and can provide the necessary focus and commitment to successfully carry out the vision and the needs for our seniors. Having the programs under the services, they will definitely ensure that senior population is best served. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry Listenby, I'm the director of the One Generation Senior Enrichment Center at 18255 Victory Boulevard in Reseda. The generation that is served by the Department of Aging program has been called the greatest generation for a reason. This is the generation that fought our wars, built our infrastructure, raised our families, paid its taxes. The self-sufficient generation that seldom utilized state programs that is supported through tax dollars. Now in the twilight of their years, they're asking for a little bit of continuation service they currently enjoy as provided by the Department of Aging. You've heard about the demographics earlier. To meet the challenges created by the growth and diversity and the longevity of the senior population, it requires vision, expertise, and leadership. The Department of Aging has demonstrated uniquely qualified in this regard. Under its leadership, the Aging Network of Providers has consistently absorbed city and state cuts, developed creative collaborations with aging and non-aging entities that have protected services and brought new programs and grants and innovative services. With the crisis we're experiencing at the state, local, and national level, it's more important than ever, we believe, to have an agency that is responsible for protecting our seniors and advocating on their behalf. Clearly, the Department of Aging is uniquely qualified in terms of experience and expertise to represent the seniors and their needs. If justice is defined as the quality of being just, righteous, equitable, or moral, then the elimination of the DOA as the agency that protects our seniors and advocates on their behalf is unjust. On behalf of the seniors and their families, we implore you to be just.
Thank you very much.
My name is Virgie Walker. I'm president of People Coordinated Services. And while I am an appointee to the State of California Commission on Aging, I am not speaking on behalf of that group today. But I do speak for the thousands of seniors who are in need of coordinated services. I believe that I also speak for the adult children of those seniors who need care. And I think I also speak for a system that needs cost and effective and efficient services. Seniors across the state of California are facing tremendous cuts and reductions in services. They are more at risk than ever. It is because of the need for coordinated services and to effectively and cost-effectively meet those risks that I would definitely say that Department of Aging has the systems, the diversity, the experience, the vision, and the ability to provide the coordinated care. And I would definitely recommend that the systems remain with the Department of Aging.
Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Erica Lozano. I'm with AARP. I'm here in support of our 615,000 members who reside in the city of Los Angeles and in opposition to the consolidation of the Department of Aging with the Department of Recreation and Parks. The senior population, as you know, isn't just poised to increase, it's poised to explode. And seniors, unfortunately, have still borne the brunt of major cuts at the state level to funding for their programs, and deeper cuts are proposed. So now more than ever, seniors need the Department of Aging and are relying on local services. Decision-making regarding services, resources, and programming for seniors requires specialized expertise and experience, and you have that in the Department of Aging. It is a cost-effective department that can leverage external funds, and seniors need it more than ever, and in the future, obviously, the city will need it more than ever, that experience and expertise to adequately serve an aging population. For these reasons, we strongly oppose this proposed consolidation.
Thank you very much, all four of you. Margaret, Shoma, Isaac K, Sherry Revoke, Nancy Volbert. Please.
Could you ask Patricia Wilson to go first?
She's the president. She's the president of the Council on Aging.
Well, all right, Patricia.
Yeah.
Come up here just for a second. We're going to hold your call just for a second. Patricia, you're right in the next line. Here we go, Patricia.
Well, I am the president of the City Council on Aging, and after Laura made her presentation, there's something that I don't need to say, but I will say it. She is a marvelous administrator, and she has efficiently run the system, and it has been such a pleasure working for her. The seniors expect the services identified by the Administration on Aging, a federal agency responsible for the advancing and the concerns and interests of older people and their caregivers. The 4-year plan developed by each AAA is audited and reviewed by the California Department on Aging auditors to assure that each AAA, the Department on Aging, does what it says it's going to do. Seniors know what they need, but seldom voice it, except through their vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Patricia.
Sherry Revord, Executive Director of the East Valley Multipurpose Senior Center in North Hollywood. We are one of the Department of Aging multipurpose centers, and I would like to strongly recommend that the council and the city consider putting the Rec and Park Senior Centers under the aegis of the Department of Aging for many reasons. One of them is that the Rec and Parks system is not properly positioned to deliver social services, especially to a geriatric population. They are not positioned to raise the leveraging matching funds that the government grants require, and it makes eminent sense, in our estimation, to put the Rec and Park Senior Centers to look at the economies of measure of putting them under the Department of Aging system. Thanks.
Yeah, one little thing here is, aging has no carpenters. They have no people who fix air conditioners. They have no people who clean floors. Recreation and Parks has that. So I don't think in this budget crisis, I could easily recommend that we take from Rec and Parks these senior buildings and give to aging. We're trying to keep it going just with limited we have. But I did want to address that so everybody knew that.
Okay. I think
Okay.
we're more talking about the operations.
Yeah, I got that. Okay, but when you said it, that's how I heard it. Thank you.
Well, I went to the meeting that you held previously, last Tuesday, and one of the elements, there were two elements that to me flowed from that meeting. Number one, the one with the Department on Disability, the need to retain the expertise and the history of each department. I think you've heard that sufficiently. The other element has to do with creative funding, so that nothing is cut. And I was thinking about it with the parks discussion and came up with three. They won't bring in millions, but they'll bring in something. There's a great deal of filming that takes place in Echo Park, in the parks, Elysian Park and Echo Park. The funding and the fees and all the rest of it flows to the general fund, and we in the community do not see any benefits, and I would like to see some of the fees go to the parks, which are heavily impacted by that filming. Another is, until the judge and the city attorney can come up with some ordinance, the swap meets, which take literally the two perimeters of Echo Park, the north and the east, why shouldn't they be paying permits then? If we are going to live with those swap meets on grassland in our public park, they should pay for the privilege of the blanket spread out there. And another, the new building that is going to open, the Boys and Girls Club, into what I am hoping, the city asset building at $1 a year, to bring in components from the nonprofit sector to pay for its running, so that some income could be generated through the arts, through theater, through some senior activities, whatever it becomes, that it can give back to the city in funding. These are just off the top of my head. The last point, the Budget and Finance Committee meetings have not yet been completed. The last is March 22nd. I want to know the priorities of what Los Angeles thinks about this to contribute to the discussion before any final decisions.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I've been a volunteer with the Department of Aging for over 14 years, and my experience with this department is that they are doing great work for the seniors, and I will probably need them myself because I'm in a situation right now. I live in a townhouse where someone has walked out and left the building and has not paid for over a year. The building is collapsing where they left it, and the rest of us are keeping up the place, and it's very hard for us to keep things going without some help. So I think the Department of Aging should remain the way it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, each and every one of you. Mr. Alfredo Hernandez, Deborah Cherry, June Simmons, and as well as Margaret spoke. And
Well-
Margaret? Ooh. You're very good. Give a big hand for that. All right, that's good there.
Who's first?
That's good. Was there anything on the floor there, or do we need to look at, or are we all right?
I'm okay.
Just step over there. Okay, good. Let's start over here and go this direction.
Well, as I mentioned last time, I've worked for Rec and Parks for 12 years, 6 of those at senior centers. Yes, Department of Aging does a great job. They provide many services, for example, case managing and transportation and grocery shopping and all that. But all that is also done through Rec and Parks. I mean, the employees, many of those employees that do this work are Rec and Parks employees. I understand that we're in a very, very difficult budget crisis, and because these two departments work so closely, I can't see any other way of saving money in our budget and, trying to balance that $212 million deficit than, merging these two departments. It makes perfect sense, and I'm completely in favor of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'm
Dr.
June
Chair.
Simmons,
Ms. Simmons, thank you.
and I'm speaking against merging these departments. The savings that can be achieved by putting aging in Park and Recs would be minuscule, and it seems to me in such a huge problem, we need to look for the large opportunities. The large opportunity is to move the 28 senior centers that Park and Recs runs, and that does not have equal service quality to those of Department of Aging. And in Laura Trejo's handout, you'll see a cost comparison that shows dramatic savings for each center to be moved across, so that there will actually be a major cost reduction by moving those. It's slide 31? 34. You can see side-by-side comparisons
Right.
showing the savings for each cost center. And just to correct something from prior, or to offer another opinion, actually the utilities and cleaning and the carpentry and those things are actually covered by those who operate under the Department of Aging. I know that Virgie Walker, who just presented, runs one of the city senior centers, and she pays the utilities and is responsible for all the maintenance that does not need to be done by Park and Recs.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. It's a little more complicated because who owns the building is the challenge, or who built the building.
But that's
Mr. Reyes is going to continue on his day. We're going to continue this hearing. Mr. Reyes, thank you for your participation on this. Just to note, we're going to note this and continue it, but also be ready to report to full council.
My deepest apologies. I have an educational program that's waiting for me, and I made a commitment to be there, so
What
thank you very much.
school?
It's a emerging charter on Griffin Avenue.
Oh, good, okay, good. In Lincoln Heights? Okay, hope you get all green lights on your way home.
So I'll go next. I'm
Yes.
Deborah Cherry from the Alzheimer's Association, and there is, I'm also speaking against the merger of those two departments. Something to consider is that the Department of Aging has that social services expertise. If you take away, if those social services are delivered less effectively, what we are going to see is increased expenses in our emergency rooms and emergency medical costs. And so I think it's what we're looking at as a false economy and a shifting of people from well-delivered social services to poorly and emergency delivered healthcare services.
Great. The CAO, hear that? CAO? I don't think there's any savings in this at all, so I just want you to know, because I know you recommended some of these consolidations. You'll answer when we're in front of council. Yes.
I'm Nancy Volpert. I'm with Jewish Family Service. We operate the Freedom Moore Multipurpose Center on Fairfax Avenue, as well as the Life Program at Park La Brea, which you have been to, and
Right.
several other.
Did you have a relative that was a police commissioner?
Civil service.
Civil Service Commission. Okay, good. Remember the name. Thank you. Keep going.
I just wanted to say, our board, staff, and clients recognize the extraordinary financial crisis you're facing and the really difficult choices that you have to make. We recognize that, but we also feel very strongly that the needs of seniors are best met, not enough coffee, by keeping aging services under the aegis of the independent Department of Aging. The Department of Aging is best suited to cost-effectively and efficiently manage aging programs and services. It's created an extended network of service providers that leverages city and federal funding to provide comprehensive services to seniors more efficiently. This allows the department to share best practices among community-based providers to provide a broad range of supportive service at lowest cost. City residents get more benefit. There's, as has been mentioned, just 15% of their funding is general fund. And quite frankly, all of the efficiencies we've been talking about, this is why the Department of Aging was created 30 years ago out of CDD and other departments. And so we encourage you to continue in this path, and thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to call the last four cards. If there's anybody I missed, because I want to make sure everybody has the opportunity to speak. Patricia Wilson, Dr. Beaton, Dr. Davison, and again, Edvar. Is he still here? Edvar? Did some leave? Letters, so 2 submitted letters, okay.
You did call my name, so I'm going to speak again.
Sure. You're Miss Wilson.
Okay, thank you.
You live in 90068, correct?
As I said before, I am president of the council, advisory council, and I was asked why do we need an advisory council and why do we need the Department on Aging? It's because the seniors identify the Department on Aging as a source to go to when they need help. They don't look to the rec and park people as a source of help. I'm sorry to say that they do when they want exercise, but they don't look at it from the standpoint that they need caregiving, they need help with transportation, they need housing information. There's dental care, yes. We did maybe you're familiar with the fact that the county and the city put together a survey on senior needs, and the major one was dental care. Now, we're working on that, but we haven't accomplished that yet, but we're working on that. But anyway, this is why the Department of Aging is indispensable to seniors, and it should not be merged with the Rec and Park, because Rec and Park's focus is different.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you very much. Tim Watkins? And if anybody who want to speak, who may have filled out a card or not, they're welcome to come up right now on this item. Very good. Tim.
Well, I'm Tim Watkins from the Watts Labor Community Action Committee. I've been its president and CEO for 10 years, and I'm actually the son of the founder of WLCAC, so I've been around there now for 45 years, and I've been privileged to see how our organization in the community of Watts has operated under many different administrations. Tom, I know you. I call you Tom because I consider us to be friends. But I know you're also a friend of Angelino's, that you're one of the best shepherds of care and concern on behalf of Angelino's, and no one loves L.A. more than you. I wish Ed were here so that he could hear what I'm about to say, but I'm kind of curious about the struggle because it's what we're accustomed to down in Watts. Every day we're trying to figure out how to make ends meet, and there's no convenient solutions. All of the solutions are inconvenient. And when I look at this system and I understand what's happening across the city today, it's almost like there's a fire sale on jobs, that people are convenient to cut to save and make up whatever the shortfall is. But I look at some other things as well. I think that when you look at buildings that have hundreds of desks in them, where many of the employees may be in the field the majority of the time, and the city may be paying $1 million a month for a building like that in some cases, that there's a huge, huge savings opportunity there that needs to be explored if it isn't already being explored, right, particularly if those rents were negotiated during the peak of the housing market when everyone was paying extremes. But, most importantly to me is a reflection of care and concern on behalf of the people we serve. And of all of the different administrations that I've seen us perform under, none has been better under the current leadership of aging. Laura Trejo and I don't go have drinks together, but certainly she is one of the most efficient and effective agency heads that we've had to work with. And what it causes is for us to be more efficient and more productive because we work together. It's a partnership. And WLCAC has been able to exceed its contract expectations almost across the board with our contracts with aging. One more thing. We had the opportunity to see what it would be like with the Parks and Rec operating a senior program. We lost one of our programs briefly. It was a very, very small technicality. We were late with a proposal, and we lost it, and it was a disaster. We got the senior citizens program back because Parks and Rec had so much trouble running that particular program. Some of this is cultural. A lot of it has, traditions and history behind it. And so I just would encourage you, to think about what it means to have a leader that has expertise and has made a career out of serving a population that requires deep, deep knowledge, deep, deep information, a different level of compassion, a different kind of compassion than we need for people that are operating a park system.
Tim, thank you very much, and I appreciate your friendship and your comments. And all of us should visit Tim's location and to see what Tim does. Tim, what's your address again?
Tell me if you'll let me say one more thing.
Okay.
10950 South Central Avenue.
Right. And what's the best time to visit? At noon hour?
Well, actually, we have anytime. Anytime, but between 9 and 5 are the normal operating hours.
Right.
If you're homeless, which some of us may soon be,
right,
you can come to our place and our people will let you in at night.
Good.
The last thing I wanted to say is that WLCAC has been around for 45 years, and we've been your partner in transportation, aging, after-school enrichment for kids, homeless services, you name it. And we have a lot of expertise, and we even have some of your former experts on our staff. I believe that Los Angeles misses the boat when it fails to sit down and conscientiously and consciously engage with longstanding CBOs to learn what we've learned. No one's asking us about how to really help with this. No one's asking us what we do to make it when there are too few resources.
Well, I appreciate you and all the other public comment, especially absolutely from those who are on the service line and helping people, and especially the compliments to the staff of aging. We have tough times ahead, but your input is very important, so I thank each and every one of you. So,
thank you.
With this matter here, we will report to council when the council is agendized this issue for general discussion. Make sure you notify everybody, Laura, so that they have an opportunity and come up with any ideas to get money off the general fund. So this will go forward, but we'll continue dialogue. You got it?
Okay, item number 3 and item number 4 require committee action.
Right.
And
But what's the CAO and the CLA report on 3 and 4? This meeting is continuing right now.
This meeting is not adjourned.
This is not adjourned, but you could go. You, Ms. Simpson, you could go. And everybody else. And if you have a chance and you got extra time, go up to the Tom Bradley Tower. It's a beautiful day in L.A. We've got items 3 and 4. You could continue on your day. You don't have to stay anymore. Your items has been acted on. Thank you. But just push the button in the elevator, go up to the top. It is a beautiful day in L.A. Madam CLA.
For item number 3, our office recommends that you concur with the ITGA committee recommendations, which is to instruct the CAO and CLA to report back on the senior efficiencies.
So they're going to report back. The deputy mayor is here. Anybody want to report on that issue? So ordered. That's item 3.
That's for item number 3.
Item 4. Please call item 4.
And item 4 was the motion Laban Chan relative to establishing a working group consisting of the Department of Cultural Affairs, the Los Angeles Department of Aging, the Department of Recreation and Parks, the CAO, the CLA, a representative of labor, to identify efficiency opportunities within those departments, including consolidation and reorganization, which might equate to budgetary savings.
Mr. Buckley, could you speak, and Ms. Trejo at the center table, since you're two here? This is an opportunity, which I believe, John, you're already on to this, and at this time, give us your suggestion on this.
I had to bite my cheek back there a few times on the digs on Rec and Parks, but the truth of the matter is every department works together. And Laura and I have been talking about efficiencies. I've been part of her team going out to the communities, working with the county. We look at every program element that we provide, in this case senior programs, as critical. Look, I'll be 60 years old this year. You know where my heart is. I want to derive some of the benefits that Laura's going to be providing, so we're going to be working with together. But I think there are efficiencies.
I know, but is there a need for, I don't want to burden you.
No, there's no need to have a
Working group. You're talking all the time
We're
now.
working with the CAO.
Okay, we're
on
talking all the
this
time.
very issue. And
But as in the next few weeks, I'm going to hold this in committee, and the next few weeks that we structure, where we look to the next fiscal year, if we need to call on some collaborative, we will do that.
Well, that very well could happen,
Right.
Council Member, because we don't know what the budget's going to be next year. And further cuts in any of our three departments will render anything we do this year obsolete. We'll have to look at
that.
Look at it.
Good. Any other comments, Cultural Affairs?
No, simply want to follow up on the discussion that we had in council chambers. All our departments are hemorrhaging right now in several of our operations.
How many buildings does Cultural Affairs have? How many are city buildings?
Actual city buildings, I can tell you that we operate about 30 facilities.
An old rec center, which used to be on Parkview or Grandview, it's the William Ray Photo Center?
Correct.
That's an old park, I believe, in the park.
Some of our
center.
facilities are park properties.
Who operates that?
Right now, we have a nonprofit organization that operates.
Right, okay, good. So that's another method, too, that, John, that they did when they had the last crisis, to look at others. Madam CAO, so your recommendation is just going to hold this on the desk. We'll hold this on committee. Departments are off in contact with the deputy mayors, respectively, and the other council office, but we've got to work together to find solutions. We have one public comment card. Noel Weiss. 1 minute.
1 minute. 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute. First, number one, I appreciate if you would request the city attorney to give you a written legal opinion for the benefit of us, the public, on the question of how and the protocol for reorganizing these agencies. We don't have that. We need that. And in this case, we're talking about specifically these indirect cost allocation issues, which, whether or not they're legal or not legal, and if so, why, and if not, why not. Public needs.
I asked the city attorney to report on that, and he will.
In writing. In writing.
I don't know if I'll do it in writing, because that takes him longer.
Well,
He's going to report on it.
I'll
If he has
time
it.
now. Okay, thank you. Number two, the controller needs to be part of any of these discussions, Mr. LaBonge, because again, we're talking about these allocations. A lot of them are just off of the wall. Who knows how and why and where? More importantly, I think the controller needs to basically get at some of these issues relative to the revenue sources and confirm some of these numbers. For example, in Rec and Parks, in the last budget, we're talking about, and Mr. Mercury I know is going to update, but other related costs, $40 million. Off of, I mean, what other related costs? What are we talking about here? Again, these are indirect. That's really, really important. Third, this 10% issue. Okay, Janice did it yesterday on starting off, but I think the council should give consideration to telling the controller to stop all payments for 30 days, and then following that point in time, identify those contracts that they basically should be cut, and after that period of time, negotiate reductions, but only pay 90% of the contracts, okay? You got $2.5 billion in outside consultants or outside contracts that we're talking about here.
You can put it in writing, Mr. Weiss.
All right, well, you know what, but you know, it's public comment. I mean, give me a chance.
You completed your time.
Well, Mr. LaBonge, you only gave a minute. Every other committee gives at least two.
I know, I give a minute, okay? So if you can make your point in a minute, and if you have anything extra, you can put it in writing. You seem like you have it written down.
Well, because I'm trying to talk fast.
You just write it down and hand it to me, and I'll consider it with the others.
Well, you know something, but people are listening, and it's our only chance for public comment most of the time. Mr. Wesson never showed up at all. Mr. Reyes left earlier.
Mr. Wesson has city business, so just talk to me.
Mr. LaBonge, I got a couple other points. Just let me finish. Just show me the courtesy, if you could. I'd appreciate it. On this Brown Act problem, the Section 908 of the Charter gives the council the right to appoint a commission under Section 908 that can involve neighborhood councils, basically to run hearings throughout the city. That'll solve your Brown Act problem if that is done, because it's open, it's transparent, and we'll get these open discussions as opposed to behind closed doors. Give consideration basically to that. The park rangers should basically stay. Waste, fraud, and abuse, and this is my last point, waste, fraud, and abuse. I haven't heard any of that discussion at all, either by this committee, by any committee, by the city council. How are we going to get waste, fraud, and abuse identified? The city attorney feels that in part they're conflicted out because they supposedly represent the mayor, the council people. How are we going to do that? We need some consideration on that issue.
Let me ask you for a minute, waste, fraud, and abuse. Give me one thing that's waste, fraud,
I don't know. I don't know what's waste, fraud, and abuse, and neither do you. The point is, if somebody is sitting in the bowels of the bureaucracy right now, and they know it, they're not going to be encouraged basically to come forth. You're never going to be able to find out.
Give me an idea.
Okay, I'll give you two ideas. One idea is, number one, let's get a good, decent whistleblower statute that will immunize these people so that they can basically come forward and model it after the federal act and what they've done in Oakland.
Have you talked to Leanne Pelham upstairs?
No, I have not. I'm talking to you right now.
No,
but Mr.
All right,
LaBonge,
if you're that antagonistic.
No, I'm not antagonistic, Mr. LaBonge. You asked for an idea. I'm trying to answer your question, and then you interrupted me in the middle. Let me just finish.
I'm trying to give you some encouragement. You did finish.
No.
You did finish.
There's one other, and it's right up your alley because you've recommended it before, a couple of years ago, and that is what we really need is what they have in New York and what they have in Chicago, a public advocate or an inspector general, basically somebody third-party independent that has the power to cut through the bureaucracy, identify the waste, fraud, and abuse, and you know what? You'll be able to get at it that way. So those are my basically two suggestions, and I appreciate you giving me the extra time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any public comment? I want to thank everybody for this committee meeting. We'll continue the dialogue. Drive safely on your way home.